All right, well, I'm really glad for those that were able to come today. I was in Costa Rica for a good portion of the beginning of the year, and while I was down there, I decided to visit some friends of mine, which is Dr. Walter and his wife, Florence. His wife was the one who was in charge of our trip last year to Israel, so that's how I met Florence. And while I was down there, Dr. Walter said, well, why don't I do an analysis of you? And I said, all right, fine, whatever. And when he did the analysis, he was able to determine issues that I knew I had had for long term. Several years, they were chronic, and I wasn't able to get any real, I didn't bother to go for any medical attention, but some of it was pretty serious. I had a kidney and bladder infection, and I had also a really bad cough. I don't know how many of you remember, but I used to cough all the time. And people used to think I had something wrong, and I kept going to the doctor and kept checking my respiratory to see what was wrong, and no problem there, but I just kept coughing and I didn't know what was going on. So Dr. Walter, when he evaluated me, he was able to tell me that the cough was not respiratory, it was actually digestive. I had a virus. A specific virus was in my intestines, which was causing the coughing. So I started to use the sprays. He'll explain all that in a minute, but I started to use the sprays because I was also having an issue with continence, believe it or not, because of the bladder and kidney infection.
For how many years?
It's at least 3 or 4 years, at least. And I took his, whatever he told me to do, I obeyed him to the T for about, 5 or 6 days?
After a while, not at the beginning, but...
5 or 6 days. And the incontinence went away, my cough went away, just all kinds of things were happening that were all positive. And then right before I left to come home, because I was there at the very beginning of my trip, and I was there for 2 months. So before I left, I went back to see them again a week before I left Costa Rica. And he tested me, and the kidney infection and all that was gone. The virus in my digestive was gone. But then he said, wow, you are just loaded with mercury. He said, what did you do? And I'm like, I don't know, but, and so we started talking. He said, well, did you eat a lot of fish? And I'm like, well, I had fish. He goes, yeah, but it wouldn't account for the amount of mercury that's in your system. And then I thought about it, and before I had seen him, or when I first saw him to when I came back to see him, I had extensive mouth work done while I was down in Costa Rica, and I had 8 Novocaine needles, and they were loaded with mercury. And so when I said, oh, I had all this mouth work done, he's like, well, how many Novocaine needles did you have? And I said, 8 large needles, because of all the work they did in my mouth. And he's like, that's where the mercury's from. So then he had to treat me, obviously, for that, which is something that I want to say to all of you, that we encounter different things every day. Even if you get in if you've already signed up for an evaluation with Dr. Walter, understand that what he finds today, he can work with and help you get rid of. But just like, I don't know if you're familiar with chiropractic or other things, things come up in our lives where we might end up getting mercury in our mouth from having needles, or other things happen where you take a chemical that you didn't realize, or somebody had a virus in their food and they gave it to you. And so, it doesn't hurt to keep a maintenance program, is what I'm saying. You check in with them every so often and say, hey, how are things going? Am I still good? Just kind of keeping things in line so that you keep your body well. But anyway, I was so impressed with what he did with me that we were sitting around the table for lunch, and I said, I have so many friends back home that have major issues, major medical issues, that are in pain all the time, or, have chronic situations. And I said, I would give anything for you to be able to talk to them and to, offer something, here in the States. And so we negotiated, we talked about it, and he said, how about if I train you? I'll train you to make the treatments, and we'll work together and do consultations and so forth and so on. So I said, and then he and his wife found out they were coming up here for next week to go to a conference for Israel in New York City next week. And so I said, well, since you're coming here anyway, do you think you could come like a week early maybe, do a little presentation, and then maybe we could have some evaluations for some people? And he said he would do that, and I really appreciated it. So all the way from Costa Rica, this wonderful doctor, Dr. Walter, I hope you give him a really good welcome, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Doctor means healer. Medical doctor means somebody that studied in a medical school under the patronage of the pharmaceutical companies. So a nurse is a doctor. A healer from an Indian organization is a doctor. I'm a doctor. I'm a healer. Okay, I just don't use pharmaceuticals. Okay, and it's not that I don't recommend them. I mean, if I go for dental work, hey, shoot me. I mean, forget it. I mean, if I get a broken hand, forget it. You're gonna put those bones together. I mean, pass me out immediately. I mean, and then deal with it later. But those pharmaceuticals, day to day, is what you have to be careful with. Okay, and we have to choose. I'm going to teach you a way where you can choose better than worst. You can choose, if you have to take some pills, you can choose something that is not so offensive for you. We have the intrinsic ability to do that. So, molecular energy. Before that, that's what I do. I call molecular energy. And I'm going to explain that what it is, but I'm going to introduce myself a little bit about my background in 30 seconds. I studied in New England. I went to high school over there. I went to Rhode Island College, graduated from Rhode Island College. Then I went to Costa Rica for a couple of years. Then I came back for graduate school in Bryant University in business. When my undergrad was in math and some physics, and I was fascinated by that, but you can't apply that in Costa Rica unless you just teach. I didn't want to teach. So I applied that in computer science. So for those of you that work with computers, I mean, I saw the 360, the 370s, IBM, all those big mainframes, you know what we call mainframes back then, and I saw the PCs coming along, and we brought into Costa Rica the first IBM PC, and I installed in Boston the first Novell network, near Cambridge. I worked in Cambridge for a company over there. So I work in the high-tech industry quite a bit. So I work in telecommunications, setting up banking and teller machines, automatic teller machines, and then phones, and modems and radio modems and all kinds of stuff. And I'm saying this, I'm boring you with this because we're going to get to it. What I learned about it is incredible technology that I'm going to tell you later. I won't tell you now because you'll get scared and you might go. But we're going to explain some things about science that we're going to advance into it. And then years later, my wife and I have come from two prolific families, and we didn't get pregnant. She didn't get pregnant, I didn't get pregnant. I said, there's something going on around here. So we started doing all kinds of stuff, and we even went to the Baptist Hospital. I don't recommend it. In Miami for in vitro fertilization. It didn't work, so don't go there. Go to Panama, go to Colombia, some other places. Don't do it in the U.S. And in the process, we met somebody which will help them out to stay some time in an apartment that we had in Costa Rica. And this guy was a scientist, is a scientist, that developed this stuff, this technology. And he did a basic, simple test on me. And I'm going to do that test in one of you. Anybody want to come here for a moment? Can you stand right here with your arm this way? We're going to do something that many of you know is called the arm test, muscle test. I'm going to push that way. I'm going to push, you push the other way, you resist, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of, what is this? White sugar. Okay, I'm going to push. Okay, again. What happened?
Weak.
It weakened her. So I'm going to give you sugar on the raw now. And then, what happened?
Strong.
She said weak with white sugar, and she said strong with sugar on the raw. Go ahead and repeat it to them, please.
The brown sugar made me strong, whereas the white sugar made me weak.
Okay. One more test for her, the last one. Can you stretch your hand like this? Okay.
What is this?
Just 1 second. Just gonna put a few grains of sugar right there. Can you see them?
Yes,
Okay.
about 20
They
grains.
can see them. Okay. Do the arm test. Hard. Hard. Now throw it out. The owners are not looking. Okay. How much stronger?
Much stronger.
Much stronger. You can sit down.
It's amazing.
Okay. They did that test with me with mega vitamins from a certain company for men. And I was fascinated. I mean, fascinated. That was what I studied back in Rhode Island in a physics class when the German professor was out there on the board and developed some formulas, and he said, therefore, if we had a big boulder, we could read its electromagnetic frequency, and we can put into a machine, play that frequency into the boulder with a higher amplitude, which I'll explain later, with a higher amplitude, and the boulder would blow into pieces. So I said, I raised my hand, Professor, why don't we have that technology instead of banging stones around? And he said, because we don't have the technology yet. Someday we will. He was wrong. We had the technology for killing pathogens and nullifying chemicals since 1930 by a doctor called Raymond Rife, R-I-F-E, that had developed and discovered that. And the product of that man, which died later on in strange situations, is this little machine called a Rife machine. This basically dupes, clones, treatments or frequencies from the left side into the right side, up in the amplitude, which I'm going to explain that later, up in the amplitude in cycles of potency, 4 times, 10 times, 50 times, and 200 times. And I'll be explaining how that works. So, I'm home. When they do this arm test on me, I'm fascinated. So we had these issues about not getting pregnant, myself and my wife. So we decided to go to North Carolina to be tested by this individual. So he ran some tests on us. Some things didn't go away on me and stay there. And some other things did go away. And for my wife, some other things went away. But we didn't become pregnant. You are going to be my children. Those that are healed are our children today. So I'm an uncle of many couples that could not have children and came over. I treated them, wham, they became pregnant within 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. I don't know how many nieces and nephews I have in Costa Rica from different couples. Okay, we said in the beginning, before, that anything that is matter has energy, right? Therefore, you are full of energy. Every organ as an organ is vibrating at a specific frequency. I'll be explaining what a frequency is later on. And that you're composed of atoms, and the atoms are bound together, and they form different molecules and different types of tissues. In the area of hard tissues, I name 7 hard tissues, which is bone, cartilage, ligaments, muscle, skin, elastic tissue like your veins and your arteries, and I'm missing one. And tendons. I missed that one before. And tendons. Right. Those hard tissues are formed by minerals, some protein, lots of minerals, and lots of fats. Omega 6, 9, 12, 3. And most of us, we don't eat enough. We don't process correctly those minerals in order to rebuild that tissue. So that's why it's so common for most people to have problems with arthritis, fibromyalgia, deterioration of tissue capacity in the body. We're going to get to it. So molecular energy is the energy that we find in molecules, like the energy we find with water. You're going to see the incredible capacity of water to heal you and to be alive, more alive. You're 76% water, therefore you're 54% hydrogen, about, and 26% oxygen. We're pure water, almost. And the molecular energy is the energy that's stored in different molecules of matter, of food products, of chemicals, and of your body, and how that interact with us. So molecular energy is the ability of us to determine why we get sick, what made us sick, what our nutrition level is, and how we can balance all these things so we can get better. Okay? A frequency is defined, let's say, in the XY axis. And how many people have seen here or have had electrocardiogram done? Most of you. So let's say that the heart goes up like that, and then goes up like that, and again goes up like that, and goes up like that. That's the normal frequency of the heart, let's say. And let's say that it's working okay, beating at 70 cycles per minute or 80 cycles per minute. And let's say that then it's beating at 80. Okay? But maybe when you saw your electrocardiogram, it wasn't necessarily doing that, but sometimes all of a sudden it just went click. It's going beep, 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 beep. Do you see that, any of you, in your heart? And sometimes would continue to do the green area, okay? And sometimes when we'd come down, would be a little skip. And then would continue beep again. Did anybody see that in your electrocardiogram? No? Yes. Or maybe they didn't show you the screen, which is usually what they do. They don't show you the screen, they tell you, oh, you're okay. So I'm sitting over there because the patient is not looking at the screen. I'm sitting over there with somebody, and I said to the doctor, why those skips? Oh, that's nothing, that's normal. That's what he said. He has no way how to fix that. In applied physics, we say that if we combine these two frequencies, then we're going to get, what do we get if we combine those two frequencies? Anybody here can tell me? The accountant? What do you get if you add 8 and 4? 12, and you divide it by 2? You get 6 as an average. So if we were to combine these two frequencies between here and here, this is not good. Between here and here, we will get a frequency to about here, right? That's applied math, that's applied physics. So, if any engineers here, any electronic engineers here, so if I ask an electronic engineer to reprogram that electrocardiogram machine, and I say, put a little button that says, normalize. Then that little button, what it would do, would play into the patient the frequency of 80 clicks per minute. Or if it was a woman, maybe 70 clicks per minute. And then what would happen with the two frequencies? It would get better from here to here. This is applied math. That would be possible. But they don't do it. They'll give you a chemical. They'll give you something to offset your blood pressure. Okay, so that's applied physics. That's a frequency. So there's a difference between a frequency. This height over here or here is called the amplitude. Okay? So I'm going to explain what the amplitude is. Let's say I get a balloon. And the balloon, I blow it up to this size. Okay? Now I'm going to expand the amplitude. How would I expand the amplitude? I put more air to double the size. What happens to the balloon? It pops. It pops. And guess what? By applied physics, we can do exactly that with pathogens. Virus, bacteria, parasites, funguses, and toxins. We can make them pop. And the physicists know that. But that has not been applied into science to heal you yet, because then we would be using Star Trek technology. Don't call me Dr. Walter, call me Dr. McCoy. Remember Star Trek? The guy would go around with a little machine. He would reset it and normalize everything in him and go and rest for a couple of hours. In a clean environment, Star Trek.
When it pops, things explode out. The explosion out, could that affect other cells or organs? Would you want it to just dissolve?
No, it's dead. It's at the micro level, it's dead. He's not eating you up. Viral bacteria, parasites, fungus, and toxins, they eat you up. They do what they're supposed to do. Once your immune system is low, okay, they go in and work before the worms come in. They're going to eat you up. So our immune system keeps them away from us. We have a defense mechanism. We have a shield, which is our immune system. So when you get contaminated by dirty water or whatever, then we get polluted and it starts to deteriorate our system. So we pop them at the micro level. And then your body excretes that and goes away.
We're going to reserve time for questions and answers at the end.
Resonance. So that's the difference between frequency and amplitude. Our machine, what it does is it raises, not the frequency, because lots of people mix these two things. It raises the amplitude, not the frequency. If I'm going to raise the frequency of this, it would be like this. Megahertz is just very fast. You can hardly see them. Hertz is just per second, like that electricity is vibrating at 60 hertz. None of those light bulbs are lit all the time. They are lit 60 times per second. And because it's too fast for your eyesight, so you think they're lit all the time, but they're not. Amplitude. Our machine takes a frequency of a virus, bacteria, parasites, which that's all science. There's lists and lists and lists of virus, bacteria, and parasites, fungus, toxins, and chemicals. That's very well known. But the machine raises the amplitude. If this is the normal amplitude, which is this height, it raises it 4 times. We call it 4x. 20 times. We call it 20x. 50 times. And way out there, somewhere out there, 200x. The scientists, over many years of experimentation, they found out that those cycles of amplitude pop the pathogens. There's a lot of things that we don't have the capacity to see or to hear. As for example, I think we all know that dogs can hear a much wider spectrum than what we do. There are whistles that you make for dogs that they react, they listen and they hear, but you can't hear them. So we are limited in a spectrum of hearing and a spectrum of seeing. The spectrum of light is like from wall to wall, and we're only seeing a little bit here. So can you imagine we can see all of that? Earthquake waves behave like a normal, like a wave in the ocean. Goes up and down like that. Okay? What would happen if there was a 7.0 earthquake and we would limit that earthquake just to these two walls? We're going to put a shield of that wall, 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers down, and on this side, I'm going to create an earthquake over here. What would happen with all of us over here? This thing would just crumble together with all that energy, and we just mix with everything, all that matter in there, and we would disappear into that matter because the energy has nowhere to go. That's what we do by popping with these frequencies, raising the amplitude of the pathogens and storing that raised amplitude of pathogens in water, which is homeopathic, and you take. Very simple. So for me, I have some machines that can do that, but for me, instead of having you to come at home to my lab and connecting you to a machine and testing you, having you there talking to me and doing all kinds of stuff, I'd rather give you the treatment so you can take home. And you're playing while you sleep, while you study, and all technology. One example of this amplitude effect, you can go and watch it in a video in YouTube called Tacoma Narrows Bridge. How many people have seen it? Okay? It's very nice to see how that huge bridge starts to sway. And the swaying starts to go higher and higher and higher. The reason was because this end of the bridge with the other end of the bridge, when the bridge was built, the wave coincided with the other side, exactly. So once the vibration started because of this storm, hurricane in the Pacific, this wall would send the wave back a little bit higher. And when it hit here, it sent it back a little bit higher. From there on, the engineers learned that they have to go a quarter wave. So when the wave of the bridge hits on the other side, it just gets nullified. Doesn't sum up to the other wave going back. So, in order to be able to, for your telephone to work, the companies use something called carrier waves, which is G4. Who has a telephone with G4 here? G3, G4? They use a carrier wave which is 2600 megahertz. Megahertz is thousands of hertz, 2600 megahertz. But how come Charlene's phone with somebody else's phone doesn't interact the conversation in there if we are all using 2600 megahertz? Can anybody explain that? Because you are not all using 2600 megahertz. You're using a submultiple of 2600 megahertz, 26.010003, 26.0004, and so on and so forth. So every phone has a different micro frequency that it links into the tower, and then therefore you have a one-to-one connection to whomever is calling you. So your phone has a very specific crystal that vibrates at that frequency, and the crystal is a quartz. So no phone could work without a stone called a quartz, which looks like a crystal. So those 2600.x frequency that your phone is using is called the carrier wave. The carrier wave. So what is a carrier wave? A carrier wave is something that when you have your TV and you turn it on and look at channel, what's the channel around here for channel 10 or whatever. Look at channel 10, it's really not channel 10. That's a megahertz or kilohertz frequency in there that they don't tell you. They call themselves channel 10. And then you tune that to channel 10 and you see the news. Okay? But that TV, what it does was, it tuned itself to that particular carrier frequency, which could have been 800 kilohertz. And then the TV erased the frequency, which it flattened the frequency, and amplified everything else through the video, through the tube, and then the sound through the speakers. That's how it works. And they only use one carrier frequency for everybody else around. So everything in communications works with carrier frequencies. Your TV, your telephone, your radio, the satellites, the airplanes, I mean, they all use carrier frequencies to communicate with one another. How many of you have heard the phone ringing, and before you pick up the phone, after you picked it up, you say, "Oh, I knew it was you"? How many of you? Why? Why did that happen? It happened because the carrier frequency of the phone ringing carried the information of the other person, because the information from point A to point B is being carried, your emotions, your feelings, and who you are, your frequency as a human being is being carried right through to the phone, and when the phone rings, the sound is carrying that ability of you to detect who that person is calling you, who that person is. That's the reason. It's science. You thought it was magic, and you thought you were too powerful and too good, but we all have that. We just, sometimes we develop it more than other people, and we pay more attention to some of those things. So carrier frequencies is the ability to transport information from point A to point B. And that's the way the brain works in the human body. When you go to acupuncture, how many people have gone to acupuncture? What the acupuncturist is doing is sticking a needle in there, intercepting the carrier frequencies that are flowing through your body. He actually, when he sticks the needle, he feels, he pulls it back because he feels that like a magnetism that is pulling that needle down. Because he's intercepting those pathways of the carrier frequencies through your body, and then when he intercepts that, the needle becomes a little tower. It has a round ball up on top, and the round ball is just disseminating energy into the atmosphere, and then pain goes away. You feel better. That's how they numb people to in China to operate them without pharmaceuticals. Every organ has its own vibration. Every suborgan has its own frequency. And I have a little paper here. I'm going to read 3 paragraphs, 3 lines from Cornell University by a professor called Alan Hedge. And when you read comments about this guy in internet, he's going to be misrepresented because some people talk about megahertz, and he's talking about hertz only. Hertz is cycles per second. Megahertz is thousands of cycles per second. Big, huge difference. He says, vibrations of frequencies ranging between 2.5 and 5 hertz, that's 2.5 hertz per minute, or cycles like that per minute, or 5 hertz, generate a strong resonance in the vertebra of the neck, here, and lumbar region with amplification of up to 240%. So when he says amplification to 240%, I explained in lay terms. So he's applying a 4 hertz right here, for a frequency of 4 hertz to a human body with an application. He's talking up to 200%, going up that much. Creates a very strong resonance in your spinal cord. Why would that be good for you? Because then it activates all those areas and you probably feel better. Okay. Vibration between 4 and 6 hertz set up resonance in the trunk, whole body here, with amplification up to 200%. See, the scientists from 1930, 1940, they were already up there. because they have done all kinds of experiments in the human body, and they were seeing incredible results. They were already curing cancer in the 1940s. Vibrations between 20 and 30 hertz set up the strongest resonance between the head and the shoulders with an amplification of 300%, 300x. Am I losing you? Too technical? Okay, good. So, how do we nullify chemicals? How do we detox chemicals from the body? Every chemical has a frequency. As for example, mercury vibrates at 125. And mercury is the number one cancer producing in the world. Followed by lead with 122 hertz, and followed by copper with 345. So what we do, in order to nullify the energy of mercury in the body, on copper and lead, in case somebody has cancer, plus chromium, cobalt, fluor, germanium, molybdenum, some of the other heavy metals, is we play that frequency into the human body, we direct that frequency to the body with an amplification 4 times, 20 times, 50 times, 200 times. So the vibration, we pop the mercury. Once we sprayed once, we popped the mercury, like you said, and that popping lasts between 30 and 45 minutes. So when somebody has cancer, I said, just apply to yourself that amplification to nullify the effect of the chemicals every 30 minutes. Why am I saying every 30 minutes? Because then, during the 16, 18 hours a day that the person is spraying, those heavy metals will be popped. They won't have any side effects on that person. So at that person, the body starts to excrete that heavy metal, because now it doesn't have the energy. So we are unbinding it to whatever is bound itself by the molecule, by the atoms of those molecules, and then the body starts to throw it out. And the body starts to rebuild, then fight that cancer. So we don't cure cancer. We just give the body the ability to defend itself from it. What else do we do? Find out what kinds of things the person was eating, doing, consuming, that contains those heavy metals to stop that. Substitute the products for other products that don't contain that, so that you don't keep offending that body. So when we apply heavy metals to the body, the cell tends to not work correctly. The cell tends to offset itself because of this low vibration, very VLF, very low frequency, VLF, very low frequencies that affects, because we work at very low frequencies, which is 1 hertz up to about 30 hertz. And these heavy metals that work on those low frequencies are deadly to us. I'm not saying we shouldn't use them at all. I mean, you can use mercury, lead, and copper as a preservative in certain things if they're not too strong. But the companies are not watching for that, and you're not finding labels that says mercury 10%. You don't find that. They're not telling you how much mercury they put in here. But they're putting it. And nobody's watching their bag to make sure they don't put more that is so offensive to you that you end up having cancer. Or any other disease, arthritis, fibromyalgia, cell deterioration, problems in the kidneys. Kidney stones come from that, from heavy metals in your body. Heavy metals in common medication, preservatives, and active ingredients. What's an active ingredient that they put in a pill? It could be a chemical that numbs your nerve system so the headache goes away, or your neck pain goes away and you feel more relaxed, or your body pain goes away. It doesn't go away, it stays there. It's just that the neurological path of communication to your brain, into your neurons that sense pain, is nullified, so the information is cut off, so you don't feel that. But the problem is still there. So we want to go after the underlying issue that caused the problem, not to hide it. If we hide it, it's going to be lingering in your body, and you try to do something with all kinds of medication that would cause side effects. So, anybody that takes pills every day, like for high blood pressure pills, as for example, or high cholesterol or prostate issues, all those are generated by high blood pressure pills. When somebody has a prostate issue, 60% of the cases comes from taking a pill every day that the prostate is not able to deal with, and therefore starts to mutate. And then you get those issues, or breast cancer, breast tumors, breast bulges, and especially in the left breast of women, or problems in the lymphatic system, tumors in the lymphatic system, lymphomas. Lymphatic system is all over the body. So cell deterioration in the body, which is rheumatism, arthritis, fibromyalgia, neuropathy, neurasthenia, Charcot syndrome, and all of those, they are exactly the same thing. They come from the inability of the body to reproduce itself at the cell level. And it's caused by cell deterioration due to chemicals. Again, the main chemicals are mercury, lead, copper, molybdenum, chromium, cobalt, fluor, chromium, cadmium, and so on and so forth. Once the organs or suborgans go down in the inability to be able to reproduce themselves, then the opportunistic pathogens start to move in. Who are the opportunistic pathogens? Bacteria, virus, parasites, fungus, and toxins. They don't come out of nothing. But one of the main problems with those is that potable water is not pure water. Potable water, there is a definition for potable water by the World Health Organization and the Ministries of Health. Potable water definition goes like this: is the water that contains the chemical compounds and the biological compounds considered to be not harmful for human consumption. So, potable water is not pure water. Okay. Potable water, the way to check for potability is that you send the water out to a lab and they put it into a petri dish which has a protein and bacteria. And then they add some of that water in that petri dish. Then they put it into a place where they warm it up for 24, 48, or 36 hours. And then the bacteria starts to grow in there. If the water is potable, has enough chlorine, fluorine, or whatever they put in there, especially chlorine, to not allow that bacteria to grow to a certain level. But it must comply that the potable water can contain between 100 and 300 colonies of E. coli. A colony of E. coli, what is that? Feces. So they have us drinking feces, scheisse. I won't mention the other word. So, if you get our water purifier, which is this one, this does not produce potable water. It produces pure water. So if you take it to a lab to check it for pure water, it's going to be so contaminated with parasites that you won't believe it, compared to the potable water. And the reason is that when you put a bacteria with a petri dish for testing, and you put this potable water, the clean water, into that petri dish, and you put it to incubate for 48 hours, the bacteria is going to thrive in that clean water because it doesn't have any chemicals to kill it. So the lab is going to say, wow, that water is really not potable. It's really contaminated with bacteria. It was not contaminated with bacteria. The bacteria was already in the petri dish that they used to check the water for potability. So you don't do that. You get your potable water from your home and you borrow from somebody a good microscope and you look at the potable water from your home and the feces you're drinking and that the government is selling you, the municipality is selling you, and then you're going to see in there a zoo, all kinds of stuff swimming up and down, left and right. Put a drop and don't put a slide on top. So you can see actually as you zoom in, as you focus your microscope, and you see all kinds of stuff swimming in there. Once the water goes through this, which you can put this at the entrance after the meter of your house, once the water goes through this, then this breaks down the H and the O's from the water. It would be fully saturated of H and O's, hydrogen and oxygen, and that bacteria, parasites, and fungus cannot live in a high level of H and O. They just get popped. So if you put a drop of water in the microscope, you're going to see all kinds of stuff in there, the same black little things that you saw before, but nothing moves. That's clean water. And we use nature to produce clean water. We use the same biological system that we have on Earth, rivers and oceans and so on and so forth, and to put into this thing, so when the water goes by a little bit of pressure, only requires very little bit of pressure, then the molecules of water in the vortex that are created in here are broken down into H and O's, and the water is saturated with H and O's, which is very good for your system. If somebody has digestive systems, something wrong with your digestive system, that starts to clear it out. Make sense? Makes sense. Science knows about that, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to let you know you can have pure water in your house. Cell deterioration in your body leads to tissue deterioration, like skin issues, allergies. An allergy could be in your skin, or could be, what's an allergy? Why do they call it allergy? Because they don't know what it is. It's like manna in the desert. Manna, what is it? What is manna? You know, allergy. Have you heard about Parkinson? Parkinson, what happens with Parkinson is, let's say my hand is here, okay? The brain has stored information in the neurons where my hand is. But all of a sudden, there's a chemical in the brain that releases an energy field that affects the information of the brain or where my hand is, my arm is. So it's affecting the information, my arm just, boom, goes out. Now the brain immediately finds out that our arm shouldn't be there, brings it back. And then the molecule of the chemical, again, is outputting that, not chemical, but that radiation or energy into that area of the neurons and goes out. Parkinson. Parkinson, when they tell you the word syndrome, is called the ignorant Parkinson. Anything that says syndrome, it means ignorant. Because Parkinson, Dr. Parkinson had no idea why this happened, nor had any idea how to cure it. So he put his last name behind the symptom. It's like cancer, or it's like Alzheimer's, that's another last name. Alzheimer's, because the memory doesn't react correctly, and the memory starts to go haywire because the brain is not getting all that information in the different areas of the memory where you store information, and it gets crisscrossed and you start talking nonsense. Alzheimer's. But they didn't know how to cure it, and they didn't know how it happened. And if they did know how it happened, if they did, they lied to you. They didn't tell the truth. So that's how the body responds to chemicals. So one thing we ask here in this practice is we are trying to let you know how to eat better, how to conduct your life in a better way so that you don't get these sicknesses and then you start getting rid of them. So today I'm going to teach you a way for you to be able to detect this, because we all have the ability to detect that. What is your name? The lady that was here for the test, she's falling asleep. What is your name? Pardon me? Loretta. Loretta, when we did the arm test, was it that difficult? It was very simple. Now, what happens if you go with somebody else and you're in the supermarket testing tomatoes, as for example, and the people see you over there just doing this crazy thing. Who are those crazy nuts over there moving their hands like that? Right? You wouldn't do it, right? Probably most people wouldn't do it because it looks crazy. You know? But I'm going to teach you a technique where you can go with somebody else, and instead of doing this, you can push the arm of somebody else right here. And then you can choose the tomatoes. You can choose this, you can choose that. You can do that at home. And then find out if the medication you're taking is good for you. You can find out if the supplement you're taking that they told you was very good is good for you. Would you want to know?
Yes.
Are you telling the truth?
Yes.
Because I've seen a lot of people that say, I pay an arm and a leg for that. Test it again to see if it's any good now. And then the next day they might come back and say, could you retest it again? Because I pay a lot for this. So somehow, maybe at night it would have transformed itself, or maybe I was not telling the truth, you know. And $50 for this, and you want me to throw it away? I'll keep drinking it. It's up to you. I'm not too much in favor of supplements that doesn't give you good pullback. Those supplements that go like that, not good for you. Not good for you. Now, they could make supplements that are food and preservatives that I call it the 90-10 Walter rule, or Dr. McCoy rule, which means is let's get rid of 90% of the stuff that we really know that is contaminated, which I'm going to give you a list of that. You all know the list. I'm just going to remind you. And you have to have the ability to train yourself to substitute those bad ingredients for better ingredients. Like I was telling her before, that if you go to Starbucks and you don't find anything good to it because everything is with white flour, then go buy a banana across the street. Buy an apple. Don't take a sandwich made out of ham. I mean, take fruit. Take granola from your house, from your neighbor. On the plane, that's what I do. I don't eat the plain food. I don't eat plastic anymore. Cell deterioration leads to tissue deterioration. Minerals are not processed. And in science, we call that metabolites. Minerals are not processed. Then, when minerals are not processed, fats, cholesterols go up. Anybody has high cholesterol is going to show problems in the tissue deterioration, hips, shoulders, tunnel carpal syndrome. It's going to show problems in the kidneys. It might show problem of retention in the bladder, because the minerals that are being formed in the kidneys condensate in crystals, and those crystals are going to rupture as you go to the bathroom. And then the pathogens that you normally dump through the urine and the feces now are going to lodge themselves in there, and they're going to find a nice broken tissue they can live on, and then now you have the infection. When the doctors come over and give you a shot of pills for bladder infection, it might take the infection away for a while, then it's going to come back because they didn't take the cause of the infection away, which was the fact that you were dumping the minerals because you were not absorbing them. Now, if you don't absorb the minerals that are processed by cholesterols, which are fats, then those fats are going to accumulate where? In the arteries. Now you end up with high blood pressure now. Now your cholesterol is high. We're going to give you a little pill for high cholesterol. Now your cholesterol is high. Now then you're going to have to start taking the blood pressure pill because you have high blood pressure. But it doesn't heal you either. It's a vicious cycle. Then there will be some digestive issues because now the liver, gallbladder are not going to work correctly, and then the person might end up with gallbladder stones, with liver stones. There's such a thing as a liver cleanse when you can do certain things to be able to dump those stones out, but you need to change your eating habits. Costa Rica is in the first 5 places in the world in gastric cancer. It starts with eating white flour and ends up in taking pharmaceuticals to take the pain away, constipation away, gas problems, sounds in your stomach, and all kinds of the gastric issues away. Then now cancer comes in, especially in the large intestine or the colon. I'm talking about white flour. I like to do a test with whole wheat flour and white flour with somebody else. Okay? Stand this way now. Strongest arm that way. It's better when you do this test, it's better if you keep this arm really straight here and don't go like this and just keep your arm straight like that. Now this is standard. Open your legs a little bit. Now don't push me because I'm going to fly that way. Just keep your arm towards me. And then when I push, you resist, okay? It's not a tug of war. I just want you to I just want you to feel the strength. Yeah. I just want you to feel the strength right there. Okay, let's see if you can win. Right here, hold it where the product is. Okay. Come on. Tell him what happened.
It's true, I'm weak.
You're weak. You lost the strength. Now let's try it with whole wheat flour.
She knows me, now she believes.
Okay. Sometimes we have to do it with somebody that we trust. Some people say, no, you can't be pushing the same way.
We thought she was your wife.
No, she's in Israel. She's in Israel. Okay, so whenever you eat something with white flour, how much energy is your body getting when by a simple arm test, through her coat, through the plastic, it weakened her. So if I'm eating something that is not alive, that is weakening me, what's happening with my body? How many years I'm going to live? So white flour is the #1 ingredient we eat in the world. The white flour from Spain, from Europe, from Italy is much better than what I'm holding here. When I go to Europe, I eat bread. I try not to eat as much if I find whole wheat bread or bread with seeds, or nuts. I'm always going to choose that one. Because I'm always going to try to choose what is better for me. But the way they make flour over there is totally different. So I'm going to give you a recommendation about pasta. Do not buy pasta made in this country. Buy pasta from Europe. So you're flowing into that 90-10 rule. Now you're getting rid of the 90% and eating that 10%, which is less offensive for you. So that's a very good principle. So Italian pasta is much better for you. It's made with white flour, but it's a kind of white flour that European norms are very different than North American norms for the white flour. Pasta, lasagna, pizzas, hot dogs. Then you're going to have gastric issues. Then you're going to have cardiovascular issues like heart murmurs, which is very common. A heart murmur is when you get a little bit of chest pain over here. How many people have gotten a chest pain over here? Every once in a while? How many people have gotten heart murmur where the heart races by itself? Okay. How many people get panic attacks that all of a sudden, oh, you can't breathe? You breathe, but you feel like you're breathing, but you need more oxygen, more air. I see a lot of, very common in young people, also in children. And how many people have gotten panic attacks that all of a sudden you feel like you're dying, like the world is ending, but you can't explain it? No? No hands raised? There's one. Okay, let me explain that. In the left ventricle brings fresh blood into the heart. And it comes from the lungs. And then you have the pulmonary valve. And then when the heart pumps blood out, you have the aortic valve. So those two cannot stay close together, nor cannot stay open together. When the heart brings blood in, the aortic valve is closed and the pulmonary valve is open. And when it pumps, that's called the diastolic. When you have chemicals along the aortic valves, called the papillary muscles, the ones that activate the aortic valve to close. Since the chemicals that you ate, they're going to the bloodstream to be taken all over the cell system into your body, then they're rubbing with pressure on that aortic valve over here. And that's why it tends to accumulate over there, and it's a very common problem with people that eat chemicals. In young people, children, and elderly as well, and adults. So what happens is that the aortic valve cannot close all the way when the heart is bringing in fresh blood. Stays open a little bit, so it's going to suck in blood from the blood that already pumped out. It's called cavitation. So you feel like that you don't have enough oxygen. And the muscles hurt a little bit because the brain is trying to stress that into closing, and it can't close all the way. So you got a little bit of chest pain in there. Other results are that eventually there's people that aortic valve is always at 5 or 10% not closing all the way. So the brain compensates by reactivating the heart, so the heart has to palpitate faster. And in some people, that's constant all the time palpitating faster. Then the heart grows like any muscle. Once you work it more, it grows more than normal. So you're going to hear the doctors, especially saying to the person, well, you have an enlarged heart. That's not good. But they don't explain to you why. And this is the reason. And if you lose blood flow in your body, you're also going to lose the blood circulation throughout your system, and the kidneys are not going to filter the same way. The lungs are not going to oxygenate the same way, and the spleen are not going to recondition that blood the same way. So when somebody takes high blood pressure pills, most of the high blood pressure pills, what they do in order to bring the blood pressure down is to do something with the heart, where the heart, instead of palpitating at 70, 80 clicks per minute, it comes down to 50 or 60. If your palpitation normal was supposed to be 80, and now your heart is palpitating at 60, now you lost about 20 to 25% of heart palpitation. So therefore you lost 20 to 25% of blood flow. Therefore you lost 25% of kidney reconditioning of the blood, of filtering, and you lost 20 to 25% of oxygenation of that blood in your lungs, and you lost 20 to 25% of reconditioning of the blood with white cells, red cells, and platelets in your spleen. But they don't tell you that. You're just like, how are you doing, honey, today? I'm okay. I'm better. My blood flow is really low now. I have low blood pressure. Can I sit over there, honey? That's not quality of life. I mean, quality of life is having our full potential in everything that we do, and with our organs working in good condition. Having the ability of the organ to reproduce itself correctly. Respiratory issues, common colds and asthma. Those come because at some point in time you deteriorated your body with certain chemicals, and then probably pathogens move in, like funguses, which are very difficult to get, or viruses, which are very difficult to get. Science will tell you that there's nothing to kill viruses with, right? So they give you vaccines, and the vaccine is actually an amount of virus that they put in your body so that the body creates an antidote against them. It creates a defensive system. But they tell you that there's no antibiotic for the virus, that the antibiotics are for bacteria but not for the virus. So how do we kill a virus? So if somebody has megalovirus or herpes virus, the virologists are going to tell you, you need to learn to live with them because there's no cure for them. So, and the way to learn to live with them is to do different things about eating and exercising to try to bring your immune system up to see if your immune system would fight them so that you are better off. Okay? So, but then don't give you something to kill them. And that's where colds, common colds, repetitively come up 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year in lots of people. Well, we shouldn't be getting colds. You don't get colds, right? You do?
I know, I haven't had one in years.
Yeah, some people have, it's like her. I mean, some people don't get sick. Some people have a good defensive system, especially if your childhood was very good. Maybe you didn't get too many vaccines, or you lived in a very nice environment and you didn't get too sick, or depending on the school that you went to, or the water that you drank, or the environment what you ate. So you grew up with a better defensive system. Head issues. When the chemicals come in there, we're talking about chemicals and pathogens here. Then the bipolarity. Bipolarity is the inability of the person to really be neutral. Sometimes could be depressive. Sometimes could be really edgy. Sometimes really upset about anything. Good morning. What's good about it? Are you doing okay? Of course, like always, I'm always okay. Honey, remember to take the trash out. Yeah, I know I have to take the trash out. And 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he never took the trash out. So honey has to go and take the trash out. Headaches and migraines. When the accumulation of the cerebral spinal fluid accumulates up here on the cranial branch, because the conduit that goes down to the spinal branch, cranial branch, if accumulates in the cranial branch, migraines. If accumulates on the spinal branch, monkeys on your back. Pain moving down. Stress. Eggshells broken when I move my neck. Stress. Too much work, you call it. You all have to work. Stress is normal. What is not normal is being sick. Whenever stress comes, we release different things in the body to be able to cope with that. And when we release those things in the body and some hormones, there's a faster blood flow, and that might release also some of the chemicals that might give you a headache. It's a side effect. But the stress and releasing more hormones in your body is very normal. But it shouldn't make you sick. We should be able to deal with it. Headaches, migraines, Parkinson, Alzheimer, Parkinson, the involuntary movement, twitches on your eyes, twitches in your mouth, clicks like some people I've seen doing things like that, or young people that just sit around and constantly going like this and moving their leg and then stay put, come on, stop moving that leg, and then go like that, or kids in the school bugging somebody else, Can't stay put. Those children that they need a medicine called Ritalina. How do they call that here? Yeah. Just to, it's a drug, just to keep them settled, because they're always bugging somebody else, Give them head. We have something called head to try to balance that off and take the chemicals away. Stop giving him hot dogs and taking them to McDonald's and some of those fast food chains that use heavy levels of chemicals beyond the ability of the human body to deal with them. It's not that we don't have to use them at all. It's that there are levels that are dangerous for the human body. And that's why we need to learn how to choose that, which I'm going to show you. Male issues, prostate issues, the most common male issue, or the ability to have male functions as well, is prostate, or the inability of having male functions because of these chemicals that deter the capacity of the body to work correctly. Female issues, menstruation problems and losing the cycle, or uterus lining issues when there's longer periods of menstruation, 6-7 days of very heavy flows, and problems with breast cancer all over the world. Sometimes I go through a supermarket and they say they have a little box over there for breast cancer research. So I put my card in there. Here's the solution. They don't want to hear about it. Hearing loss. How many people do you know that have hearing problems, so they use an amplification apparatus? Okay. Do you use one? No? Okay. If somebody uses an amplification apparatus, did he lose the hearing? Or is it that the hearing is inhibited? Have you ever thought about that? In the old days, they would give him a cone like that, or they use a horn, to, what? Because they need some amplification. Most of the hearing loss problems is due to inflammation of the inner ear or an infection that is chronic in there that clogs up the passage of the air into the ear, so the sound doesn't get there, doesn't go through. We get rid of that, we get rid of the fungus and the parasites, probably 80% of the cases as not hearing loss. It's the incapacity of the sound to get there because something is obstructing it. We get what, and the most common is parasites, funguses, and viruses, because remember, we said that there's hardly anything to kill viruses. So if there's a colony of virus over there that is causing an inflammation, the person can't hear well. But if we give him antibiotic, the antibiotic doesn't kill viruses, so that won't work. So if they have a parasite, what do you do if you have parasites? You take a poison into your body to poison your digestive system to kill the parasites with that poison, right? So what happens with the parasite that you have in your liver, or your pancreas, or your kidneys? How do you kill them? Or what if you have them in the heart or in the lungs? How do you kill them? Well, they linger and they stay there. You don't kill them. Because that poison is not going to go there. So same happens in the ear. You have parasites in the ear. They're going to build that colony over there. So we need something to kill it. That's why putting a little bit of peroxide lots of times helps, because it kills the parasites, kills the viruses, kills funguses, and then you keep putting peroxide and get so much better with oxygen. But they don't tell you that in the hospitals. So they better sell you a $2,000 hearing apparatus for you to try to hear. Eye issues. The most common problems with the eye issues are 3 of them, which is an inability of the brain to receive the information through the oculomotor nerve. Oculomotor nerve is this one, the one where I can move the eye up and down, left and right. And the optic nerve is the one that allows me to focus. Okay? If my brain doesn't get the information on my focusing, I can't focus at a distance. I can't see. Or the opposite. Or sometimes you can, with the oculomotor nerve, you can move that way, and also the focusing nerve is not working correctly, so the eye is not being able to move like this to be able to focus, and the person has peripheral vision or tunnel vision. The other issue is watery eyes, because the conduit, canaliculi, that goes down to your throat, the teardrops are not flowing down. So you get watery eyes and droopy eyes and red eyes all the time. Or itchy eyes, because the conduit is too opened up, so the eyes are always dry. So if the eyes are always dry, then the pressure of the eye, that's what they tell you, then goes up. Why? Because the blood flow has to flow more in order to be able to produce more tears, which the tears are flowing down instead of staying a little bit longer on the eye. Why is the canaliculi too open or too closed? Because parasites or funguses or bacteria are chemical that's not allowing it to reproduce itself. So we get rid of those, you get rid of the eye problems as well. Okay, so now we're going to do some tests on some of the products over here. And then later I'm going to do a test on one of you. And I'm not going to ask you what you have. I'm going to run a test. And the system is going to tell me what the problems are.
Can we take a break right now for about maybe 15 minutes for some refreshments back there? And then we
Perfect. And then also, we're going to have a question and answer period about sicknesses or whatever you want. And then we're going to have a session on how to test for things so that you know how to do it.